Alright, my name is Jason Brokamp, and this is New Orleans Natural Hazards Research. This is a picture of downtown New Orleans, just so you have a good idea of what I'll be talking about. Some background information. New Orleans is located in Louisiana, on the coast of the Gulf of Mexico. It's on somewhat of a peninsula. It's home to about 378,715 people, and its elevation can range from negative 6.5 feet to about 20. Okay, so here's the problem. These are some hazards affecting New Orleans. One hazard is flooding hazards. Recently, flooding has become a very common occurrence due to many of the contributing factors ahead. Subsidence hazards is one major contributor of flooding. As you saw on the last slide, there are parts of New Orleans that have sunken below sea level. Some coastal hazards. Like most coastal cities, New Orleans is prone to very severe storms. Severity has steadily been increasing as well, which results in flooding and collateral damage. Here's an example of the flooding from New Orleans back in 2005 when Katrina hit. Here's an example of subsiding in the suburbs of New Orleans. It's done a lot of damage, and they're currently working on fixing it right now. They just approved a $2 billion deal about a year or two ago to start fixing all of the subsiding issues on sidewalks and streets. Here's another picture from Katrina. It's kind of extreme, but it's a coastal hazard nonetheless. Some hazards affecting New Orleans again. Some more weather hazards such as storms, hurricanes, and floods, which are the three major weather hazards to worry about when in New Orleans. Some climate change hazards. Due to New Orleans subsiding, the warming of the earth and the sea level rising could cause a submergence of parts of New Orleans to come sooner than they expected. Just to put in perspective some famous disasters for you. In 1965, Hurricane Betsy hit. Hurricane Betsy was one of the deadliest storms in history, is widely known for also being one of the most economically damaging storms ever. It caused the Mississippi River just next to New Orleans to rise by 10 feet and was estimated to cost about $1.42 billion in damages, which is about $9.8 billion today. As well, 76 people died as a direct result of Hurricane Betsy. And then, you very well know, in 2005, Hurricane Katrina hit. Hurricane Katrina consumed about 80% of New Orleans, most of it covering neighborhoods, which made Katrina the largest residential hurricane in United States history. The amount of flooding ranged from a foot of standing water to being anywhere from being 10 feet under. Katrina captured 968 lives due to flooding, trauma, and heart failure. It took over a month for the water levels to retreat, and Katrina obviously far surpassed the cost and damages left by Betsy, with $135 billion in damages. Most of this money went to relief, to help provide food and shelter, but not very much of it went towards rebuilding. And then there was the Great Flood of 1927. The Great Flood of 1927 is a landmark flood. To this day, it's being used as a comparison tool to modern-day flooding. An average of between 6 and 11 inches of rain fell in 1927, with some places getting up to 14 inches in just 18 hours. The Mississippi River raged at 3 million cubic feet per second. And then more recently, the Louisiana flood of 2016. The Louisiana flood of 2016 occurred just northwest of New Orleans as a slow-moving low-pressure system rolled into Louisiana. The storm brought up to 2 feet of rainfall in just 2 days. This type of flash flooding has the same chance of occurring as a 1,000-year flood. Another day of rain went by, and at this point the flash flooding had drained into sewers and rivers, causing them to also flood, creating a chain event that only grew for the next day or two. So obviously their drainage systems need some improving. And next we have subsiding and the subsiding issues. New Orleans is only at risk because of its low elevation. It also lacks the natural barriers like islands and wetlands to absorb the blow from storm surges. The low elevation is due in great part to human factors. The growing city of New Orleans is struggling to find places to expand to, and one place that has suffered most are the surrounding swamplands, which have been drained and inhabited. This increases dangers from incoming storms and is also a cause for the subsidence. Another factor is climate change, and every second that passes, New Orleans is getting lower and sea levels are also getting higher. The rising sea levels are greatly due to our emissions of greenhouse gases causing glaciers to melt, which raise the sea levels and also heightens the risk and severity of flooding, which is a growing problem for the city. Another problem resulting from climate change is the growing severity of the storms. Whether it's rain, lightning, or hurricanes, the severity of these are taking its toll. Hurricanes are getting stronger and flooding is becoming an ever-growing issue in New Orleans. Fixing just this issue would immensely help the city and maybe even help resolve these hazards threatening the city on a more natural and permanent level. And then the man-made disaster of the levees, and personally I think they're just a trap waiting to happen. The city quickly recognized this threat and very quickly built levees, which is the issue. They didn't really think about it. Katrina and the flooding just hit, and people just kind of freaked out, so they did whatever was easiest and fastest. So there is a levee on both sides of New Orleans, protecting from the northern Lake Pontchartrain, if that's how you pronounce it, and the southern bend of the Mississippi River. These levees, however, make it extremely difficult for the water to escape once it has entered the bowl, as they call it, or the lowest region in the city. Another factor for the subsidence is disappearing wetlands. Human interference has caused the islands and wetlands surrounding New Orleans to disappear at an alarming rate, and in addition, the levees being built are disrupting the flow of water, damaging its natural cycle, resulting in a loss of the little wetlands that remain. Now, how are they solving the issue? A good portion of the money is being put towards those who are affected most and also most often. And what money am I talking about? The money that they are raising and saving to better prepare for the next big storm. Those at the bottom of the bowl are constantly being barraged and flooded by rainfall that shouldn't be as severe as it is, but due to poor drainage systems, these homes are constantly at risk. The Army Corps has put a lot of time and money into helping this high-risk area as well, which in turn will help the rest of the city. Their improvements consist of additional water pumps at the base of the bowl to help keep up with the increasing amount of flooding, and culverts, as they're called, to help redirect excess water away from roads and houses and back out to sea. So here's an example of a culvert. As you can see, it's simply just a type of sewer system which keeps the water from overflowing onto streets and into highly populated areas. Here is a newly built levee that they've just built to protect from flooding and the sea level rising. And then here is their new water pump, which helps control the flooding in the riverways and redirects the water downstream to more evenly distribute the water. And finally, one of the most important mitigation efforts that New Orleans has been working on is gaining as much knowledge as possible to understand what areas need the most work and how they can expand in a more knowledgeable way without endangering lives or structures. This consists of doing extensive research on high-risk areas, communicating the risks of living or working in certain areas of the city, so spreading knowledge to those who are affected. They also develop solutions and ways to manage certain situations, raise disaster relief funding, and then apply that funding to help enhance. They apply the enhanced funding to the most affected areas. And here are my sources for my images and context. And that's all I have. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed.